It's slab time. We're breaking down the best spring crappie techniques, baits, lures, and tips and tricks that will help you catch more big crappie this spring. Let's go. Springtime crappie fishing is one of the most exciting and productive times of the year to catch big slabs. So let's start with a better understanding of the spring crappie's behavior and think like a crappie so we can give ourselves the best chance to catch more and bigger slabs. As the water begins to warm up from about 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, crappies start to move from the deeper winter waters into shallower areas for their spawning grounds. So we want to look for them around submerged structure like fallen trees, brush piles, and weed edges. These are all great areas that provide cover and attract bait fish, which makes them prime feeding spots for crappie. Crappie love hiding out in the tangled branches of fallen trees, which offer them protection from predators and a steady supply of food too. So we want to cast our baits near the branches and just let them sink slowly down to them. And man-made or natural brush piles will almost always hold large schools of crappie for the same reasons. If you can use your depth finder to find these, you will find the fish. And weed edges and edge vegetation along the edges of weed beds are where they'll hunt for small fish and insects. So if you cast your baits parallel to the weed line and retrieve slowly, this will catch nice crappie every time, baby. Okay, now for the fun part. How do we catch them one after the other? Using the right gear and baits can make a huge difference between filling the cooler with giant slabs or not. So we talked about looking for crappie near brush piles, docks, and submerged timber near their staging areas, typically in just around 5 to 12 feet of water. And a proven and highly effective way to catch crappie in spring is with live, large emerald shiner minnows, by far their favorite food. And all we need to do is use a lightweight balsa stick bobber or a slip bobber if you need to fish in much deeper water so that we can see and feel every single thing they're doing down below. We really don't need expensive gear, just a good graphite light action or medium action spinning rod and reel with 15 to 20 pound braided line since we're fishing in structure and we don't want to get hung up. And then just a simple size 2 to size 6 blood red hook, which will be the perfect size for allowing the minnow to swim freely and not get injured. And then just a small split shot about 6 inches up from the hook to get the bait down. Now here is the real hack, fishermen. We want to make sure we're hooking the mini up through the lips and not through the body. This will allow it to swim more naturally and will certainly keep them alive a lot longer. It's also important to have a good aerator in your minnow bucket water that's pumping sufficient oxygen into the water so the minis can stay alive for a number of hours while you're out there. There's no better feeling in the world than watching the bobber go under as soon as you cast it out. And crappie are a schooling fish, so if you find one, you're likely going to catch a lot more in that same area. But if by some chance the crappie are ignoring live minnows, or you prefer a more active fishing approach, then jig fishing is a very deadly method for springtime slabs for sure. All you need is a 1/16 ounce or a 1/32 ounce blood red jig hook paired with some type of soft plastic like a squirm and squirt, and we absolutely love the chartreuse colors for any time of the year and in darker and stained water. And a pink and pearl combination is also a classic crappie killer no matter what clarity of water you're fishing in. And a nice blue and silver combination is perfect if you're fishing in very clear water. There are literally thousands of small crappie jigs and lures on the market. So as long as you go smaller and use these color patterns, you will catch springtime crappie, and I guarantee it. Just use a slow retrieve with light twitches and pauses, or you can use a subtle vertical jigging approach if you're fishing right on top of the cover and structure. Crappie love to suspend in different water depths, so just experiment with different depths and colors until you nail them. Now on to the most widely used techniques to catch more crappie everywhere you fish. Of course, you can always adapt any approach you use based on whether you're out on a boat crappie fishing, fishing in the marina docks, or fishing from shore at your local inland lake. So we've talked already about our favorite setup for crappie fishing, not only because it's highly effective, but also because it's just simply a ton of fun, and that is bobber fishing. You can set the bobber at different depths until you find where the crappie are holding, but they do move throughout the water column, so it's always a good idea if you have two rods out to set each at a slightly different depth. This is the most natural presentation for crappie when you're using live minnows. And again, you can use a slip bobber if you're fishing in a very deep lake. And another very highly effective way to catch suspending crappie when you're out fishing on a boat is trolling your lures along weed edges, lily pads and vegetation, and of course around and near submerged structure. You can use your depth finder to find structure and the depths where the crappie are schooling, and then use multiple rods out to cover a larger area of water. And we've talked already about vertical jigging for spring crappie. If you drop your jig to the bottom and slowly lift it up as you retrieve it through the water, as crappie feed up, it's many times on the way up when they're really going to hammer it during your retrieve. Just try different colors and sizes until you see what they really want that day. And lastly, if you're out on a boat fishing, there's a technique called spider rigging, which just involves using multiple rods to cover a larger area of water. This is really great for finding large schools of crappie when you go through them and keep all the rods right in the strike zone for multiple strikes at once. You want to make sure you got a couple people on board the boat, though, to handle double headers and triple headers when they come real quick like that. Okay, now let's spend a little bit more time around location so we can make sure we put ourselves on the fish every time for the most success. The top spots to target in early spring for crappie are going to be shallow bays and inlets with muddy or sandy bottoms. These are going to warm up the fastest and thus draw in loads of crappie pre-spawn. You always want to find the northern section of the lake, as this is always going to warm up the fastest. You also want to focus your efforts near creek mouths and channels with moving water, as the crappie will often stage up in here before moving in shallower. And we've talked already about the best crappie magnets, and that is when you fish in spring, being around sunken trees, docks, brush piles, and laydowns. All are great places near shade and structure that will always be holding crappie this time of year. And if you're fishing in the southern states, cypress trees are often going to be prime crappie spots. You want to fish the submerged roots and trunks where there's ample food and shelter. And we've mentioned boat docks, especially any that have brush and vegetation nearby. Just drop your baits along and underneath the docks, and if they're in there, they will strike. And last but not least is rocky points, which have a good mix of both depth and cover. So just fish around the rocks, especially where they meet up into deeper water. Okay, on to the last section with lots of great tips and tricks to round out your springtime crappie fishing success. Hope you're still with us and you've got a lot of good information from the video thus far. Make sure to give us a like, hit the subscribe button and notification bell to stay updated with lots of in-depth fishing tips, tricks, and tutorials to up your fishing game, and we post this stuff daily. Okay, it's always a great idea if you want to catch more fish, especially crappie and bass, to fish in early morning at dawn and at dusk just before sundown, because crappie love to feed most aggressively in low light conditions. And another way to make sure you land more crappie every time is just using a nice, soft, and light hook set. That's why they're called paper mouths, with soft mouths. So land them a bit gently and you won't pull the hook right out of his mouth. And crappie are always on the move, so if you haven't found them in your spot that you're fishing in 15 to 20 minutes, don't be afraid to reel in and change spots. They're actively on the move this time of the year, and you need to be too. Spring is prime time for slab crappie fishing with bobbers, minnows, and jigs. So get out there and start filling your stringer full of slab paper mouths with all these awesome tips and tactics. Whether you're fishing from a boat, kayak, or out on the bank, these tips and techniques will help you reel in more fish this spring season. Go get 'em, gang. Okay, folks, thanks for watching. Please like this video, hit the subscribe button before you leave, and don't forget to enable your bell notifications so you never miss another great video coming your way.